Legends aren't made overnight. Let's talk about the ones who changed the game forever. Welcome to Legends Brief. I'm Chase. The UFC didn't start as the polished billion-dollar sport you watch today. It started as a brutal tournament designed to answer one question: what martial art actually works in a real fight? What came out of that question? A sport, a culture, and fighters so extraordinary they didn't just win, they redefined what was possible. Let's get into it. Number 10. Royce Gracie. You cannot tell the story of the UFC without starting here. Royce Gracie didn't just compete in the early UFC, he proved the entire concept worked. UFC 1. No weight classes, no time limits, fighters from completely different disciplines. Royce wasn't the biggest, wasn't the most intimidating, but he was a Gracie. He won UFC 1, UFC 2, UFC 4, submitting fighters bigger and stronger than him, using technique, leverage, and patience. He proved that ground fighting wasn't a backup plan. It was a complete fighting system. Every fighter today who trains BJJ is training because of what Royce Gracie proved. He is the founding father of modern MMA. Full stop. Number 9. Randy Couture. Randy Couture refused to accept limitations. UFC champion at heavyweight and light heavyweight. First title at 34, last title at 43. In a sport obsessed with youth, Couture kept winning through intelligence, wrestling fundamentals, and an iron will that younger, faster, stronger opponents simply couldn't match. He controlled the cage, controlled the clinch, ground opponents down like clockwork, beat Tim Sylvia, Gabriel Gonzaga, Chuck Liddell twice, came back from retirement multiple times, got counted out every time, proved everyone wrong every time. Captain America, and for his era, that wasn't an exaggeration. Number 8. Chuck Liddell. If Couture was the UFC's captain, Chuck Liddell was its rock star, mid-2000s, UFC fighting to break into mainstream American sports culture. Chuck Liddell was the face on the poster, the mohawk, the tattoos, the hands, exactly the crossover star the sport needed at exactly the right moment, and the image backed up the ability. Knockout power that made heavyweight fans nervous, an unconventional defensive wrestling style. Instead of taking people down, he sprawled and dared you to trade. His rivalry with Randy Couture across 3 fights is one of the greatest in UFC history. Those fights alone introduced millions of new fans to the sport. Number 7. BJ Penn. BJ Penn was a prodigy in the truest sense. First non-Brazilian to win the World Jiu-Jitsu Championship. After only a few years of training, 2-division UFC champion, lightweight and welterweight, his BJJ on the ground was as good as anyone in the sport's history. His boxing sharp and explosive. When Penn was locked in and motivated, he was nearly unbeatable. The Penn that dismantled Matt Hughes, that outclassed Joe Stevenson, that pushed Georges St-Pierre to his absolute limit. Pure natural talent, almost unmatched. When he was on, there were very few fighters in history you'd rather watch. Number 6. Georges St-Pierre. GSP is the blueprint. If you want to know what a complete mixed martial artist looks like, you study Georges St-Pierre, welterweight champion, 9 consecutive title defenses. 9. He didn't just beat opponents, he systematically dismantled them. Game plans so thorough that most title defenses weren't even close. Olympic-level wrestling, sharp, accurate boxing, elite BJJ, elite conditioning. He studied opponents like a chess player and exploited every weakness with surgical precision. Then came back after 4 years of retirement and won a middleweight title at 36, pound for pound. One of the greatest to ever do it. Top 3. These don't just belong on this list, they are the list. Number 3. Khabib Nurmagomedov, 29-0, retired, undefeated, never once in serious danger of losing. Khabib Nurmagomedov built a career so dominant it defied the logic of combat sports. In a sport where anyone can get knocked out, where one mistake ends everything, Khabib went 29 fights without losing a single round in any meaningful way. That is statistically almost impossible at the highest level of competition. His wrestling was otherworldly. He grew up in Dagestan, Russia, where wrestling isn't just a sport, It's a cultural institution. His father had him wrestling bears as a child. Literal bears. That background produced a grappler whose takedowns were essentially unavoidable. And his ground control, once he had you down, felt like being trapped under a car. He won the lightweight championship, then made 3 defenses: Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, each one more dominant than the last. The McGregor fight was the biggest in UFC history at the time. Khabib handled it like a training session. What makes his legacy even more remarkable? He retired after his father passed away from COVID complications. A man who dedicated his life to Khabib's career, he retired with the belt, undefeated, honoring his father's memory. No decline, no loss, no cautionary tale, just a perfect record and a quiet exit. Khabib didn't just win fights, he made the sport look insufficient to contain him. Number 2, Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva wasn't just the best fighter in the world, he was the most entertaining fighter in the world. His UFC middleweight title reign lasted from 2006 to 2013, 16 consecutive title defenses, a record that still stands. But the record doesn't capture what made watching Anderson Silva something special. It was the way he won. He fought like someone who had already seen the fight in a dream, moving with a looseness that bordered on arrogance, leaning away from punches by millimeters, hands down, counterpunching with surgical timing. He knocked out Forrest Griffin while barely moving. Against Vitor Belfort, he threw a front kick to the face, a technique most people considered obsolete in modern MMA, knocked him out cold with it. BJJ black belt, Muay Thai practitioner, professional boxing experience, student of capoeira, a fighting style so fluid and unpredictable that world-class opponents couldn't solve it in real time. His later career had losses and controversy, but that doesn't rewrite what he built. That 6-year run at middleweight is the single greatest sustained dominance in UFC championship history. When people talk about the MMA GOAT, Anderson Silva's name is always in that room. Always. Number 1. Jon Jones. There is no honest conversation about the greatest UFC fighter of all time that doesn't end with Jon Jones. The resume is simply too overwhelming to argue against. Youngest UFC champion in history. Light heavyweight title at 23 years old. What followed was dominance so complete that fighters, coaches, and analysts ran out of ways to describe it. Lyoto Machida, Rashad Evans, Vitor Belfort, Alexander Gustafsson, twice, Daniel Cormier, twice. Then he went up to heavyweight, where fighters outweighed him by 30 to 40 pounds, and won that title too. What makes Jones technically exceptional is his physical tools combined with an almost alien fight IQ, 84.5-inch wingspan, longer than most heavyweights, despite fighting at light heavyweight for most of his career. Oblique kicks, unorthodox elbows, spinning techniques, ground and pound that suffocates opponents. Every fight, new ways to win that his opponent didn't prepare for, because nobody could have predicted them. The conversation around Jones always comes with an asterisk. The failed drug tests, the legal issues, the controversies, those are real, and they matter in the full picture. But on pure ability alone, the athleticism, the creativity, the adaptability, the championship pedigree across 2 weight classes, it adds up to a package the sport has simply never seen before. Jon Jones is complicated, Jon Jones is controversial, and Jon Jones, by almost every measurable standard of fighting excellence, is the greatest to ever compete inside a UFC octagon. That's why he's number 1. That's our list. 10 UFC legends who didn't just fight, they built a sport from the ground up and took it places nobody thought possible. Drop a comment. Tell me who you think the real GOAT is. That conversation never gets old. If you're new here, welcome to Legends Brief. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. I'm Chase, and we'll see you on the next one.